So the first time it happened to me, I was scared as hell. I'm not gonna even lie. It really scared me. So what exactly is dumping syndrome? Well, in a nutshell, it's basically a cluster of different symptoms that a person who has undergone gastric sleeve surgery or other weight loss surgeries or any sort of major surgery to the stomach may experience. For example, when you undergo VSG like I did, you have 70 to 80% of your stomach removed. It's a large portion of your stomach, and as a result your stomach isn't able to regulate like the exact movement or the pace at which the food moves through your stomach. Now it moves through the small intestine, or dumps, hence the name dumping, dumps into the small intestine a whole lot faster now. And so as a result, if you do certain things, you may experience one or more of the symptoms of dumping syndrome. For example, the first time it happened to me, I think I was 3 months post-op at this point. Yeah, I think I was around 3 months post-op. And I decided I wanted to try a piece of a cupcake just to see, you know, if I could tolerate it. I don't think I had much sugar, or I want to say I don't think I had any sugar aside from the sugars, you know, like in my protein drinks and stuff like that at this point. So I wanted to try it just to see what would happen. And everything went okay at first. It was a Hostess cupcake. One of the chocolate ones with the vanilla frosting in the middle. So these used to be like one of my favorite desserts back in the day. Like, well, store-bought desserts. I'm a country girl and I love homemade cakes and pies. I ain't gonna lie about that. But I love those too. So those was like my favorite if I'm on the run type, you know, on the road dealies or whatever. So, and they come in a pack of 2. So of course I knew I couldn't eat 2, and I knew I couldn't even eat 1. But I think I had way too much of the piece that I had. I had a half of one of the cupcakes. And instead of removing the filling from the inside, which is nothing but sugar, well, the entire thing is sugar, but that is just instant sugar rush, I ate it. But I didn't eat it fast, or so I thought. Maybe I ate it a little too fast. And at this point I had also eaten too much of it, because once you do reintroduce certain things, you're really gonna have to gauge how much of it you can handle. Some people choose to avoid sweets permanently, and that's great if that's something you can do and stick to. I don't. I have the occasional sweets now, and they're in huge moderation. Majority of my snacks now, sweets and snacks, are keto friendly or sugar free or low carb or something along those lines. But I know that I really can't handle processed sugary sweets anymore. Absolutely not. And it was a learning process. Now, being 2 days from now at this point I am 2 days from being 10 months post-op, and at that point I was 3 months post-op, so there's a huge difference. So now the max I can handle of anything sugary or like a fully processed baked good is half of a half, and it depends on the size of it, because sometimes I can't even handle half of a half. Sometimes I'm lucky if I can get in a fourth of a half or something, like a very tiny piece, and then I stop. because of what happened the very first time when I was 3 months post-op. So anyway, I ate half of the donut. Of the cupcake. And, I'm like, oh, this didn't do anything. So my greedy ass eats the other half of the half instead of just stopping at that first half, which is technically a fourth of the cupcake. I should have stopped there, but I didn't. So I ate the entire half, and within a few minutes later, I feel really flushed and hot, and like I felt like I was not on fire, but my skin felt very flushed. My face, my arms, and on top of that, I had heart palpitations. Like my heart started beating real fast, really fast. So at this point, I'm nervous as hell now. I'm like, oh Lord, what did I do? What did I do? What did I do? I'm panicking, I'm sweating, and I'm just like, oh, I shouldn't have ate that, I shouldn't have ate that. And so those were, at that point, I thought I was experiencing dumping, but I wasn't too sure. So I looked online, and I'm like, I Googled symptoms of dumping, and sure enough, that's exactly what I was experiencing. I had the heart palpitations, I had the sudden flushed feeling, and I was sweating, and so I'm like, okay, I can't do this anymore. Now, I also felt queasy in my stomach, like it was a very sick feeling. I didn't vomit, but it was just like very painful, like I wanted to, or it was just very uncomfortable feeling in my stomach. So that was my first time experiencing dumping. I've experienced it probably once or twice since in my full 10-month post-op time. So I'm still not perfect. I doubt I'll ever be perfect, but it's only happened once or twice since. And I don't like the feeling at all anytime. So different people have different symptoms, but some of the other symptoms include, well, I said nausea, some people vomit, some people have very bad diarrhea. There are a bunch of different symptoms of dumping syndrome. But so if you feel any sort of discomfort after eating something post-op, more than likely you're probably experiencing some form of, or dumping in some form, or one of the many varied symptoms of dumping. So be very careful with that. And typically the best way to avoid dumping is to not eat those foods again, or for a very long time. Also, you have to learn how to moderate the amount of that food that you eat. Like, you have to know your tolerance level. If you choose to avoid it completely, that's great. But if you don't, and you allow yourself the occasional snack or the occasional treat, like when you're out and about with family and you don't have any of your keto or low carb or low calorie snacks with you, because all the time you won't have your items, your needed items with you, the items that you prefer to eat. And you might be out and about with family or friends or lunch, something very impromptu. And it is kind of uncomfortable in certain situations to sit there and just not eat anything, especially if you're at like a bakery or an ice cream parlor or something like that. There are always certain options. Well, I'm not going to say always, but there are options that are better, I should say. So always opt for the healthier version of a dessert if you can, if you're not one of those who are truly, who are totally avoiding it. But be very careful with processed sugar. Processed sugar is one of the #1 causes of dumping syndrome. Trust me, I learned that the hard way. So now, like I said, if I have something sweet, to the average person, they'll be like, why even bother? Because it's such a small amount, but it's enough to satisfy my craving. Like, usually it's honestly probably this big of something that I have, and I'm done, because I can't handle it anymore. I do not like the feeling that I experienced, and so I would just prefer not to even go there. But yeah, dumping typically, and it can occur rather early, but it depends upon like at what at what time frame you reintroduce like solid foods, and even some pureed fruit, even certain pureed foods could possibly cause dumping depending upon what's in it. You can also experience dumping from eating too fast. So you definitely want to make sure that you are chewing your food until it's totally liquefied. I mean, it was so bad in the beginning that I had to count or time my chews. I honestly had to time myself for chewing, and I would set a timer for 20 to 30 seconds to time, my chewing. And usually within that time frame, sometimes I would just count the number of chews, and it would be like 15 to 20 chews, and it's liquefied enough to swallow. Also, another thing that I do, or I've taught myself to avoid dumping or feeling full too quickly, which is another symptom of dumping. If you feel full way too quickly, and of course when you first have bariatric surgery, you are going to get full fast. However, a few months out, if you notice that you're still getting full a little bit too quickly, you might be eating too fast. So I had to space out the amount of time between my bites, and I still do at this point. I honestly still do to this day. I'm going to try to find one of my pictures from Instagram and put it in here or somewhere, but it was something that, it was a process that I honestly had to come up with, because I noticed that it just seems like nothing I did I could get full. I mean, I couldn't eat much of anything before I got full, and so I had to develop a process of doing it, which is why I said you're basically going to have to forget everything you used to know about eating. You're going to have to relearn so much when it comes to eating. Not only what you can eat, but the amount of it you can eat, and then the intervals with which you can eat. And I'm talking about chewing per meal intervals. It's that serious. Nothing is really the same anymore. I'm sure, later as we go on down the line, things will become normal, but you're going to have to teach yourself a new normal, because what's old is no longer normal or tolerable with your stomach. So like I said, one of the best things to do to avoid dumping is limit or avoid processed sugars. I typically use, like I said, sugar-free products, artificial sweetened products, stevia sweetened products. If I have carbs, occasionally I will eat white carbs, but I prefer to go for the complex carbs, the brown rice and the quinoas and those types of grains, as opposed to the white rice. I really can't handle too much bread, so I prefer like wraps now, like low carb wraps and things like that, because it's not even that I'm afraid of bread, it's just like less than a quarter of a piece of bread and I'm done. Like, I don't care what else I'm eating, that bread is gonna take me out. So I just really don't even bother, because I do want to try to enjoy a little bit of the little bit that I can eat, and I don't want to get full off of a bite or two of bread. So I just prefer to eat like low carb wraps or something like that. Another thing to do is to not eat and drink. Avoid eating and drinking at the same time. That is something else that you're probably going to have to teach yourself, because the two mixing in your stomach is a recipe for disaster that will also result in one of the many, or some of the many, dumping symptoms. Excuse me. And in addition to that, I just wouldn't even want to experience that terrible, that extreme feeling of gross fullness. Like, it's a level of, like, how can I explain it now? if you've ever overeaten before, like you just pigged out and gorged out, and then you feel like so just gross afterwards, that's what I would say eating and drinking at the same time would be akin to. That's my estimation of it. I've accidentally done that before too, and it was a total accident. Usually if I go out to eat now, well, when I'm eating dinner at home now, dinner or lunch or whatever, I don't even bring a drink out with my meal. I don't bring me a drink out with my meal at all. I don't have a drink around me. But in the early phases, you forget. So it's not even that you're forgetting, you're just relearning. So like I said, I made the mistake of eating too much sweets back in the day when I was learning. So now I know my limit. I accidentally had a drink with my meal, not really realizing, hey, you can't do that. And oh my God, it just felt so horrible. Like, I felt horrible. And I didn't eat and drink much at the same time because I can't, you know, and it was such a small amount, but it just made me feel, I felt like I'd eaten an entire Thanksgiving dinner by myself. That's how I'm talking about, the whole turkey and all the fixings and all the sides, everybody plate. Like, I ate it. That's how I felt. Like, ugh. So don't even do that to yourself. Avoid eating and drinking. I would say at this point, I occasionally drink within 15 minutes of eating, occasionally. But I prefer to do it like I was doing it in the beginning. That makes me feel so much more comfortable, which is 30 minutes. My limit between eating and drinking is 30 minutes. So you'll have to figure out or play around with a limit, but I think a safe limit is 30 minutes between eating and drinking. Don't do them within, unless you wait within 30 minutes of each other. I'm safe when I do that. If I'm really, really thirsty or really, really hungry, at this point, being 10 months out, I can push it to 15 minutes, you know, but I still prefer to wait 30 minutes. And again, there are apps that can help you with this. There are so many things that can help you, and you're going to want to surround yourself and just engross yourself in learning how to live this new lifestyle. But yeah, this was a video basically about like dumping, how to avoid it, what would happen, or certain symptoms. If you've ever experienced dumping, let us know what your experience was in the comment section below. And if you haven't done so already, please don't forget to subscribe and turn the notifications on so you can keep up with my posts. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.